for my first hearings that I had with the child custody part of it, they didn't tell us we had a hearing. Like, I found out the day we had a hearing. I found out that 3 hours before the hearing that we had one.
Are they just incompetent, A, B, trying to fuck you, or C, so used to dealing with like poor and retarded people that they just don't tell people anything because they can't explain it?
D, all the above.
All the above.
Seriously. So one of the more interesting things as we were having a walkthrough, one of the times the government was in my house, they get to come check out your house like whenever you want when they have your children, right? Because they just go, oh well, if you want to ever see them again, it's amazing.
That's how great,
they just gun to your head the whole time. They're like, oh, you want us to come over to your house right now? You want us to do that? It's like, yes, please. Actually, I would love it if you just walked around in it and looked at all the doors or whatever.
Children. Oh God.
And but one of the times
now, did I read that right?
Yeah, kids are back home.
Oh, that's great.
Full time. My parents didn't move in. Neither did Kayla's parents. The first lawyers that we had were appointed attorneys because, again, so you get out of jail and they, like I said, they didn't serve us any of the documents related to the child custody case. So we had no idea. We started hearing from our relatives about some hearing that was coming up. And we're like, what is the hearing for? And they're like, we don't know. Like, well, why? Like, what are you talking about a hearing for? We don't know anything about it. And we couldn't look it up because you can't look up child custody stuff. They have it all the names are protected, but there wasn't even a hearing listed at the time we were supposedly having a hearing. So then the government shows up at my house and they're like, oh yeah, are you coming to the hearing today? It's, are you coming to the hearing today? The one about your kids. And it's like, yes. What the fuck? I said, when are you going to actually service the papers? They said, well, we don't have to. And it's like, well, I mean, you kind of do it though. Yeah. You kind of have to, except they don't, because they just have your children and they don't have to do anything like you. And then you have to fight for it.
Yeah.
And the leverage that they always have is, okay, you can fight, but we'll just make it take longer.
Yeah.
And it just, you mentioned part 3 where they're just so used to dealing with people who are like dumb or don't speak English or whatever. Not used to the legal system. One of the walkthroughs, the government worker looks around. She goes, we're just not used to dealing with people in your socioeconomic status.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to. Like, there's nothing to do here.
I said, probably because I didn't stab someone for meth. like the other people you're dealing with is the people who stab people for drugs or whatever. Like, what you guys have done is bullshit.
Yeah, because the government exists to deal with poor people, lady. That's like, do you guys... Nobody told you guys that, but that's the reason why we have this.
Oh, that was great. This whole saga gets fantastic, but and eventually I get to tell the whole story. But for now, like, the first lawyers we had were appointed at the hearings that we didn't know we had. We got there. Our lawyers had nothing prepared. They hadn't read our complaint. We didn't get to see our complaint. I didn't see our complaint until the second hearing.
Wow.
So just so everybody's aware of
you don't know what you're getting accused of
no.
With your kids, having to do with your kids?
Nope. At the first hearing, I had not even seen the government allegations against us. Then at the second hearing, I finally get to read them, and I'm reading them over my lawyer's shoulder, who are lawyers. They're like, oh, we want to do a continuance at this first hearing. We'll give us 10 days to prepare a case. And we got there 10 days later after the continuance. And because they first said, they're like, well, who are your witnesses and what are your exhibits? I'm like, I don't know. I've been in jail. Like, what exhibits do we need? The government has to show a dangerous environment. There's nothing that I don't need an exhibit. I have witnesses. And they're like, well, let's just get the case ready. We'll do a continuance for 10 days and then we'll do it. So we're like, I guess 10 days later, I show up to court and my lawyer looks at me and she goes, what are your exhibits and where are your witnesses? And I said, excuse me, that's your fucking job. Like, and I had been in contact with this woman. Like, I had spoken with her between hearings.
What's like an example of like, what was she supposed to have had in that time?
I don't know what exhibits she would have done, but like this is her thing was let's do a continuance so we can get some
Yeah.
exhibits and witnesses together.
Okay.
I had the same witnesses. Actually, I didn't have the same witnesses because I think I would have had another witness at the first hearing than I was able to have. But I had the same witness list of potential people, and the exhibits were the same, which is the government has to show. That's the exhibit, is the government has to show something. I don't have to show anything. There's not like an exhibit I can show you to show that something didn't happen. Yeah. So I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? And they had no preparation done for the case. They hadn't talked to a single witness. They barely had talked to me. They hadn't prepared an exhibit. They hadn't read any reports. They had nothing. I had to effectively represent myself, but I had to fight with my own counsel to do it. It was fucking embarrassing. Those two lawyers get appointed to every child custody case in the county. Every single one gets one of those two lawyers.
If they argue too much, they lose business.
I wouldn't allege that. That would be insane to allege that the hand that feeds them is the government who chooses to appoint them to every single case, and that's their exclusive.
You live in like Hazard County? What the fuck is going on there? How are two lawyers in charge of all the child custody shit?
There's not that many people in the county. The total people in the county is about 50,000. I've had live streams bigger than this county.
Yeah.
So like that's how like small the actual population is. But all of them, all I could think though is like, well, I'm a lawyer who speaks English. And so I know what's fucking going on. Like when people are talking in the courtroom, we have a pretty high Hispanic population, a pretty high Somali population. I can't imagine how fucked over they get by these lawyers. Cause I'm sitting there like, so one of the things I mentioned online that people kind of misunderstood, I asked my lawyer, unrelated to what we had going on in any of the particular court hearings, but I asked my lawyer to get a recording for me. I said, I'm entitled to that recorded conversation. And she said, they don't usually like to do that. Yeah, I'm not joking when I said the government has a recorded conversation with me and I want it because I can have it. Right. She goes, they don't usually like to do that. And I said, it's required by law that they give me that conversation that they have.
It's such an odd way to phrase that.
So I said, your job is to get that. So ask for it. And I asked for it and they didn't give it to me for fucking ever. They actually did not respond to my lawyer's request. It was true. They didn't like doing that. Yeah. But she's like, well, why do you want this recorded conversation? I said, well, because they might want to use something I said in the conversation. And I want to make sure that if they do that, we're able to counter with what was actually said. Because I know what I said and I know how the government works. They'll take something out of context. It's called the rule of completeness. And she goes, what's that? And I said, I'm sorry, what's the rule of completeness? She says, yeah. And I said, well, if they use like a piece of evidence against you, like a portion, like let's say you write a book and they use one sentence out of the book, but there's surrounding paragraphs that make the sentence kind of important or change the meaning of something. The rule of completeness allows you to introduce enough evidence to complete the actual fact that you're going with. And she goes, in all my years of practice, I've never heard of the rule of completeness.
That's not.
And I about put a fucking gun in my mouth, dude.
God.
She had no idea. She didn't know the actual rules of evidence, the basic rules of evidence that exist. None. She did no preparation. Didn't talk to me about the case at all. Didn't do anything.
Yeah.
It was
you got
fucking
paid though.
Not by me, thank Christ.
Yeah, by the government. That's fucked, man.
Yeah.